Hello, today's tutorial is on the nodal axis, which is south node and north node. And I talk about the shadow mostly of the south node and light of the north node. I talk about how to work with them, how to understand which one is which, how to identify where you're at in your evolutionary journey with each, and I have some good tips there. I think they're good. I'll be looking at aspects, particularly conjunctions, and offering again some tips how to work with the storyline that's unfolding for you through your nodal axis. And I'll be looking at transits, and I have some really stay till that end with some really good transit tips, what to do, and how to all of this innate to help you really kind of walk this path more assuredly, more with greater confidence and passion and love for it, really, for the journey from your south node to your north node. Two things. In this video, there is a different story unfolding, and the narrative basically if we have a planet or planets squaring the nodal axis. So my next tutorial will be on that, and that's called the skip step. And this is, it's slightly, everything I share here, it's slightly different than, so if you have a planet that squares your nodal axis, I will still listen to this because absolutely, particularly the transits and the aspects, but particularly the transits piece is important irrespective of whether you have a planet squaring your nodal axis or not. So do listen or stay tuned for that. But yeah, if you have a planet square your nodal axis, there will be another video in the next tutorial specifically looking at that. And the second one is that when I was recording this a few times before, like I would do this now with a screenshot on my phone, and I like it because it's so much easier and quicker for me than all the other ways. What I've done once is I thought I was recording where I wasn't. So you kind of pause this thing here, as you can see, you pause and then it keeps ticking, and then when you come back, there is, instead of a pause, there is just a play, and you press that, and I just must have mispressed something. So I spent 20 minutes talking, and there wasn't recording, and I already had, however many, maybe 15, maybe 10 minutes, but I had already 20 minutes recorded, and I liked the first 20 minutes, and I wasn't going to delete. So, oh my God, it was, I think I apologized in a video. I can't remember which one it was. In the tutorial that I may have repeated myself. So anyway, so when I got to the very end of this, I thought I did that. I pressed the end. Well, I thought I pressed the end, and then for some reason, anyway, I then went to do it again, or to just open this thing to close it, I think, or whatever. And I realized I didn't press it. And at that point, I just said, "You are kidding me, you'll see." And it's pretty like, what? Good job I didn't swear. Not that I mind swearing otherwise, but still. This is like a tutorial. It's slightly different than my off-the-cuff, just spontaneous outbursts and outpourings on here. So anyway, I'm not gonna even attempt to try to edit it. I'm not there yet whatsoever when it comes to YouTube videos and editing and all that. So yeah, if you stick till the end, you'll hear me say that. And anyway, so sorry about that. But so hope you enjoy the rest of this tutorial, and I shall see you next week, hopefully, for the next one. Okay, so let's first start with the basics. So in astro.com, where I have shown you in one of my first tutorials how to create your own chart, you have if you do it automatically, like not do what I'm about to show you, you will only be seeing your north node. Now, your south node is exactly opposite your north node, exactly, and I'll show you literally to the second. But sometimes for someone who's like myself, visual, I like to include visually so I can see where it sits, even though I know where it sits. But it's just easier, and especially if you're not versed in astrology yet, that I would then definitely recommend. So once you're in astro.com and you have already created your chart, you go to via free horoscopes tab here at the top left, at least how I'm looking at the screen, and then you go all the way down to extended chart selection. Sorry. So you click on extended and you get extended chart selection. And this is my chart. So this would be your name there. And you scroll all the way down. You use your house system the way you want to use it and all that. It's just really this piece I want to show you. So you click descending node, and that's it. And then click here to show the chart. So what you get is your north node, which would have been there anyway, this little squiggle there with the little T inside, which stands for true node. There is a true and mean node, and I'm not gonna go into that. I use true node and it works for me, and it's usually just a degree difference, but it can be. For someone like myself, it could actually have been literally 0 degree Aries, but it's not. In my case, it isn't. So it's worth maybe checking, but I really wouldn't have much to say as to how to use mean node and what exactly the difference is. I looked into it once years ago and yeah, was happy with sticking with the true node. Whatever nuances of interpretations the two were offering, I wasn't really interested. So you'll have to look this up yourself. But basically, so that's your north node. It looks like, I don't know, a face with a wig or a girl with two kind of, what do you call those things on the side? I don't know what you call them, but buns or something. I don't know. Oh, Leia from Star Wars. Sorry. I recently woke up. I'm still drinking my chicory, so you'll have to forgive me being a bit silly. And then that's the point. That's the exact opposite point, and it looks like it's been turned upside down. The same image, just turned, so that's upright, and this is turned upside down. And you will, let me show you. So that's your south node. This thing here is your south node. And then here, you will see true node, descending node, literally by the second. 29 Pisces, Virgo, 14 minutes, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. So like I say, even if you didn't have the visual and forgot to do descending node, like I just showed you, just look exactly the opposite point and you'll see it will be there basically. So here I have just a plain chart, just clean rather, with nothing else other than just the nodes to kind of even clearly and loudly illustrate this kind of trajectory that the two stand for. And one of the premises of this trajectory, of this nodal axis, so-called, so your south node is here at the bottom, and it's headed or heading for this north node here on top. And it's, like I say, this is just an example. You could be having it differently in terms of where it sits and then which way it goes up or down in terms of the chart, but it's always going towards the north node, this nodal axis trajectory. And what I mean by that is the premise with the assumption, or both, of nodal axis is past lives, in that we come into this life bringing our south node into it and everything that it stands for. So in this case, it's everything to do with Leo. And then if you have planets conjunct it, it would be those planets. And often it doesn't have to be that all planets are in Leo, particularly if you have a stellium around. And I'll talk about that later, about conjunctions. But everything around your south node, the house, and the sign, and then if you, like I say, have conjunctions, all of that put together is something you have come into this life bringing wealth of that skill, knowledge, experience. And actually, if you look at this, and it looks like a little bag, doesn't it? Like bag of goodies that you are bringing, or it's like a cup. It's also called a cup, or there are other metaphors, dragon's tail, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But essentially, this is your bag of goodies. Now, the problem with South Node is that we have done this particular combination of, like I say, archetype, sign, house, and everything else you have around it. We have lived that and experienced and worked through and been it for so long. It's are the themes of our life to begin with. But the point is to empty this bag, or rather to use it. But also the sense, so that's the kind of point of South Node, to actually utilize all this knowledge, experience, skills that you learned and gathered throughout many lifetimes before this current one. So that's the ideal. That's the idea, if you like, and not just ideal, but the idea. However, what happens, and this is where the whole shadow piece about the South Node comes into the story, is that this is something we identified too much with, or rather, so imagine, for instance, Leo, fifth house. I mean, this is just like I say, an example, but Leo, fifth house. So let's say either self-expression, like a theater actor, or or a sports person who, let's stick with the theater actor. So it's like the audiences, and you shine your light, you have a spotlight on you, and you shine and beam your talents of singing or acting or whatever they are. And because you have done that so well and for so long, or so many lifetimes, you are such an excellent actor, and you have received so much praise, and you've been seen as this expert in this field. So yes, maybe actor isn't necessarily an expert, in a sense that, well, yes, you are still an expert, aren't you? So it's only natural and normal that one identifies so much with the South Node, because, like I say, we have done it so many times, and we have done it so well. But the time is now to release the identification with it, or too much identification with it. In other words, what we are asked for, or what our South Node asks us for, and our this lifetime purpose is to move away from it. So it's like to stretch ourselves outside of our comfort zone, because our South Node is also a mega comfort zone. This is where the shadow piece comes. We just love it there. We are so comfortable there. It comes so natural to us. And we still get the praise because we're good at it. But the point is to move towards the North Node, and the life that we are given and that we live this time around is to master our North Node, is to keep moving towards it. It's like your North Star. But it's an area, and like I said at the beginning of the intro of this video, this is slightly different story when you have a planet squaring your nodal axis. So that will be the next tutorial. But this is just for everything but having a square to the nodal axis. So in this case, this tutorial, this time around, I'm talking about this North Node being an unknown, and being something that you are, it isn't unknown to you. You're not familiar with it. You haven't really had many, if any, experiences with it. So you're scared of it, and we're kind of reluctant to go towards it. And certainly from my experience, personal, but also, as I always say, observing close people to me and occasional clients, I noticed that it's usually a sort of Uranus opposition kind of catapults us into, oh, well, maybe it's just generational. Maybe my generation of people needed that Uranus opposition, but maybe younger generations, in fact, I'm pretty sure, far more evolved and sharp and tuned into all of this, particularly if you're into astrology at this level and into nodes and past lives, then I'm sure you're already familiar with your North Node. But you might still feel this resistance. You know that you should be going towards it, but you might feel resistance because it's an unknown, like I say. And in doing so, you'll be losing this identity that you have so entrenched yourself in of the South Node. And that's the toughest part. That's the fear. The fear comes of, who am I if I'm not my South Node? And you really don't know. That's the point. You don't know who you are. You are something within your North Node, but there are so many, like with any of these archetypes and well, planets, houses, all of that, so many ways that they can be expressed. So you could be God knows what, all kinds of stuff within your North Node. So one way to work with this is to study, research, read everything about your North Node, and just kind of get acquainted. And if you are, inclined this way, to kind of push yourself. So I mean, the thing that comes to mind is, well, it could be actually Aquarius. I can use that example. So maybe you have a real aversion towards groups, or you're not familiar, or so you're not comfortable being in big groups, and or maybe you're not even comfortable with any kind of astrology, for instance, any sort of Aquarian, Uranian type of topics and subjects that are out there. But what you will find, so you're kind of, like I say, you're not even interested, but you feel the pull. And how I feel this works, how kind of the universe supports us in all of this, is because the moment you are in a group, you'll notice that they love you. It's where you belong. And yet you're uncomfortable in a group, let's say, if it's a North Node in Aquarius. Or if you're Pisces, like in my case, Pisces North Node, it was like a long time before I kind of became comfortable with many Piscean traits. And but what was, like I say, funny is, like, every time I was with Pisces people, they really, or Pisces themes within, like art or dance or singing or spirituality or mystery, magic, it really worked. It's like I felt safe. Well, I mean, or rather, I may have not felt safe, but the proof, the evidence was that I was actually safe. So that's my point. It's like your North Node is scary, and you might feel, unnerved to go there. It's like so alien to you. But when you are there, you will notice that things go well for you. You don't have reasons to feel fearful and scared. So, and another wonderful thing about North Node is that we tend to really master its highest vibration. And I always say, like, if you want to understand and get a really, if you want to understand a sign or an archetype, then maybe start looking at people with that North Node. So in this case, if you want to understand Aquarius, although the thing is, it's not like they're a finished article. So but if you have conversations with them, if you have Aquarian conversation with them, you will see how they will challenge the Aquarian shadow without them knowing necessarily that that's a shadow, but they will question and challenge Aquarius archetype, and those would be the great questions to do shadow work with. You see what I mean? Because when you're afraid of something, when something is so alien, when it's like a beginner's mind, you really are so fresh, and you have this fresh and new perspective of that archetype. So you're really in a fantastic place to ask brilliant questions, and that would reveal weaknesses, i.e. shadow. So that's why your North Node it's like that's the one archetype you will do so well. I mean, you will do, you can do all the other ones as well, of course, but this one is almost like a guaranteed. You have everything it takes to get to that highest vibration of that archetype. Now, let me draw your attention to the shapes and the symbolism of the shapes of the two nodes. So to my left on the screen is the North Node, so this one here. Oops. So this one here is North Node, and this one here is South Node. So although I showed you on the previous slide that it goes from South Node, the trajectory is from South Node to North Node, it's not a one single track that goes just one way, or it's not a one-way street at all. The way to work with, or the way the two work, and they work together. And actually, I can quickly bring in this story, which I'm sure there is far more in-depth story and content on this topic that you can find also if you Google the dragon tail and dragon head. So the dragon tail is the South Node, and the dragon head is the North Node. And the story goes that a dragon, kind of like a mythical creature, dared to do something they just shouldn't have. I think it sort of dates, or it sort of locates, this myth is Eastern or Far East or Chinese, maybe even, I'm not sure. Or maybe Indian, I'm not sure. Anyway, like I say, there is content that's far more accurate and in depth on this topic if you're interested on the dragon story of this, if that resonates for some reason. but the thing is that he was punished for whatever he was daring to do, and then he was cut in half. So the south node is the dragon tail, and the north node is the head, the dragon's head, and the two are separate. Like, as you can see, the furthest points in your, like, the opposites is what I mean. So they're furthest apart. Two pieces in your chart, 2 points in your chart can possibly be. So the tail, or the lower body, and the upper body, or the head. And the story there, rather, the kind of the symbolism of this, or the metaphor, is that there is always the kind of chasing, and also the tail, like the head tail chases the head chases the tail, but also the tail and everything in the lower part, which is to do with digestion, is always hungry, and it's like ravenous. So that's a good metaphor when you look at the shapes. So although yes, it looks like a head, the north node, as I was saying earlier, like with the female with some kind of buns at the bottom, or some lock, the curls. But the more serious point I want to make here is that if you look at the south node, it looks like a cup, like an empty cup. And that's often talked about, the two are often talked about in terms of an empty cup, and then a north node having to fill the empty cup of the south node. So the point is that you need to keep moving and keep tapping into your north node. The more frequently you do that, the more you kind of dedicate your life as one of the paths, as one of the practices in your life day to day, is to do something north node, because it will feed your south node, and it won't be ravenous anymore. It won't be it's like we will replenish whatever south node was just getting too identified with, and then it's just like furious when it needs to disidentify with all this gold or all these goodies he has in its bag. When he has to give that away, or give himself away from it, it gets angry, because it's like I said, who am I without my south node if I'm not my south node? But if you work on your north node without necessarily even thinking about how you're not your south node, just almost like another project, in doing so, you will feed your south node, and it won't be any more ravenous. It's like you will illuminate its shadow, or you will reduce its shadow, you will integrate its shadow, you will release its all this shadowy activity of ravenousness and the greediness, and actually a phenomenally useful and helpful and a great little trick to kind of be tapping into when you slip into your south node shadow, as in the stuff of your south node that really you really need to release. You can't be doing this anymore. You're holding yourself back. You're stalling your progress if you keep doing this. Whatever this is for you, right? Your house, your sign, and all the conjunctions you may have there. So this really fantastically helpful little trick to know when you're doing that is the sensation of being drained. Drained, it's like you just can't, you're just drained. It's like it drains you. The activity drains you. The initial, and it is a bit of a push and pull. The initial, it's like the initial spark. Let's say quickly, because I'm Virgo South Node, so I have this thing about productivity, and I'm gonna do my daily thing, and I'm gonna produce these things. I'm gonna work. Work is the biggest theme of my life, and I do, and it's like this initial excitement is because it's a familiar territory, and I've done it so well so many times, and also helping and service is another big theme, and there'll be more content coming on that topic, but not necessarily tutorials, just generally. And so the initial excitement that you may feel is because it's something so familiar, and you're so good at it, or you used to be so good at it, and you still are. But there is an instant, or rather seconds later, or maybe a day later, or a week later, I don't know, depends. But soon enough, you will start to feel like vacuous. It's like meaningless. It's emptying you of, but not like a good emptiness, like when you're fasting. So it's like a detoxing process of emptying yourself. No, this is like, it's not even it's not like it's toxic. It's literally just like draining you of life. All this motivation and excitement is gone, and you just feel like, what? I can't do this. This doesn't do it for me, really. Why did I again kind of fall for that trap and trick or whatever of like that initial excitement? So identify those patterns of where you get initially excited, and then pretty quickly you start to feel really drained from that same activity. That is your south node. And it could be, like I say, and it could be squares. Sorry. I forgot that I'll be having a separate tutorial on squares. So yeah, stay tuned for next one, because I'll be talking about that there as well. But yeah, so that's how you identify your shadow of your south node. And that is where the north node comes in, filling the cup that you just emptied. That's another way. It's like a balm. So the moment you feel like that, the draining that I just described, you rush to your north node and do something of your north node, whatever that is. So in my case, every time when I fall, and I'm currently in that trough, and it's a regular monthly occurrence with me, I have to do something Piscean. So I just go on some kind of art binge, or art making, or dance, or music, or just spirituality, tarot, even astrology, obviously, just anything Piscean, basically. And I just feel soothed, and I'm back. I feel I'm back in myself, and I feel more alive, excited. I feel content. Everything's back to being good again, after feeling so useless and pointless and meaningless, because I was draining this south node of mine, Virgo, where I have a heavy stellium. But that's just my personal story. But the lesson for everyone is, whenever you feel this draining because you are stuck in your south node, just rush to your north node and do something of that. So another thing that comes to mind, Sagittarius north node. Go into nature. Go hiking. Go on an adventure. Go traveling, even if it's small. Maybe you can't afford long term, especially nowadays with the pandemic. But yeah, even if it's adventure in mind, or watch those videos or films that are about that. Anything Sagittarian, just to get you unstuck from your Gemini north node, the south node. So you get the gist, or the dynamic of this. So let me say a few words about aspects. So in this chart, as you can see, we have the yellow squiggles, which are the north nodes, or the nodal axis, north and south node. And then the green dots are planets. I didn't want to use any particular one, just as a general example. And then what I want to focus on, so when it comes to aspects and your nodal axis, there are two critical, super hyper important aspects, and they are conjunctions to either of the two, and the squares. But the squares will be a separate video. Next tutorial will be on the squares, and it's so-called skip step. But when it's a conjunction, so conjunction is the other super important aspect to think about and learn and get familiar with when it comes to your nodal axis. But before I go into a little bit more of that, just the other aspects, like the sextiles and the trines, are essentially your helpers. So all this work that I described, like all this push and pull of between the two, you can look to your sextiles and trines to the nodal axis, either side of them, and there will be difference. So if it's trine to one of them, it will be sextile to another. You will just see in the little box on the chart as you make it in astro.com what aspects they make, and that's why it's particularly important to include the descending node as well as the ascending, because you will have all the aspects to both clearly shown on that little table in astro.com on your chart. So they're like your little helpers, and they're like good things so those are other activities you can use to boost and to work with the 2 points. And so conjunctions, basically, if you have conjunctions around your south node, it's the same kind of storyline, in the sense that this is just extra goodies in this bag that you have brought from other lifetimes. So your skills, your talents, your expertise, you've done it to death and back, but you will find that you identify, and usually with in the first half of life, especially till first Saturn return, we tend to really live through our south node, and I certainly can vouch for that. And it's not just that we live; we just people recognize us for these things. Like this story from another life, past life, continues into this life in the early years, and this is often like another good example is when you hear those stories of children that are being born, you know, and from like a year age 2 or something, as soon as they start talking about who they were in a past life without maybe using the terminology. It would take you, your new parent, you know, your parent, take you, the parent, to the village where they lived before and meet their wife there. Then, you know, you heard these stories, I'm sure. So that's your example, and that usually happens when they're so young, because it's almost like that memory is still fresh. That's kind of how I see it anyway. And so you will find that the world recognizes you, and the world still loves you for all those. This is another reason why we can be so stuck in the shadow, or rather too identified with our south node and not move away from it. And that's the shadow principle of the south node. We really need to be moving away from it and into the north node. And then the more we do north node, the happier our south node is. So the planets conjunct there at the south node are just your extra baggage, essentially. So again, look at those archetypes, and in the book by Rand Butler that I keep asking anyone who follows me to have, if you want to use astrology to do your shadow work, and look for the shadow expressions of those conjunctions, those planets, and you can sometimes have, which can this situation with the south node conjunction or north node as well can be quite complex, because you could have, if you have 3 planets there, even if one of them is not by technically conjunction, and I don't even know what anymore those technical terms are, as in like what are the rules. I remember when I started astrology, it was 8 degree was conjunction. I think then I heard people talk about 10, and I know some people nowadays talk about 15 degrees. It's considered conjunction. I told you already, I don't really care anymore about these little rules. I think they just stand in the way. If you have, so here in this case, those 3 here planets, sorry, I was just checking that I'm actually still recording and not what I've done before, made a mess. So these 3 planets might be too far away, and if you only have 1 planet here, personally, I wouldn't consider that conjunction. But if they were a bit closer in Cancer, for let's say by the beginning of Cancer, but then you had another one at the end of Leo, and then another one at the end of Cancer, I would. I mean, because the reason I'm saying that is because it's like a chain reaction. You know, they're all strung together near enough. So this very furthest one isn't really a conjunction to your south node but by extension, by being conjunct to any other ones, all the other ones in between itself and the south node, it is. So you see what I mean? So, I mean, that's just like, but I would obviously start with the closest ones. And then you'll see, if you start, then once you kind of get really acquainted with the dynamics and what you're working through there, then you can branch out, I would suggest. So the conjunctions to your south node are just the other identifiers you identify so easily with, and you're really meant to kind of take those clothes off and start wearing some new clothes of your north node. And again, the planets you have there is what you are. It's like lessons around that archetype. First, they're unknown to you. Again, this is if you don't have a square to the nodal axis. And even if you have a square, actually no, sorry, I'll speak about that when I get to the other tutorial. But the planets conjunct your north node are the ones you're not really familiar with, as in, because like I say, that they're not, you haven't really done them enough, if ever. So they might just feel, again, the same principle like the north node, just you're a bit wary of them, a bit anxious, or you don't trust them. You just, you don't feel comfortable in those, whatever they are. If it's Venus, let's say relationships, or if it's Mercury, you don't feel confident about your ability to be eloquent or to speak or to write, or and so. But again, you kind of really, life will be throwing stuff at you that you need to be kind of moving towards them. But you're essentially learning them, really. You're kind of learning them from scratch, which is where this whole thing, that those planets around your north node are the ones that you can become a master, and just really, or rather, master in the sense that you really do a high vibrational version of them. You adopt and embody a higher vibrational version of these archetypes, as opposed to your south node, where, like I say, it's a denser vibration because you just overdone it. And now there is a difference. I find that if the north node conjunction planets are less personal, so if they're like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? That they are somewhat. My impression from what I observed, I don't have them myself, but from what I observed from clients and people around me, is that it's almost like you have no control so much. You don't even know necessarily. You don't control your work with them necessarily as much. They're far bigger than you, and it's like you are learning them without knowing you're learning them, is maybe the simplest way of putting it. But when they're personal planets, then you kind of far more aware of it and conscious of it. The others are possibly more difficult to bring into your conscious awareness and then work with them, because they are transpersonal and collective more, but also they're harder to sort of grapple and grasp. They're far bigger than us, I suppose, is another way of putting it. A tip I would also offer here, that I personally think is so fabulous, is to look at the Sabian symbols of your nodes, and then if you have conjunctions, also their Sabian symbols, and unless they exactly conjunct by the degree, then they would have a different Sabian symbol. And then, and this is particular, well, I would say for anyone, but this is particularly for any, like a Gemini, Sagittarius, or 5th house, or 3rd house, 12th house, and obviously each time the opposite house as well. I mean, for really any, really. But meaning the creative kind of writing type of exercise is what this is. So I would, if you're not too averse to creative writing, to use your south node conjunctions and south node to start a story, and the end is the north node and conjunctions there, and see what, kind of like a what's that thing called, free flow writing, or stream of consciousness writing, or morning pages. Maybe first thing in the morning. I would actually, just as I'm doing this, so it just came to me. So morning pages are essentially when you, first thing in the morning, before you even had your coffee, ideally, or while you're still in that sort of fuzzy in between, your mind is in between fully awake and asleep kind of phase or state, and pick up your notebook that you dedicate to this work, and then at the start, like at the first page or two, however much it takes you, just list those things and make it like this is the starting point of the narrative of the story, and this is where they need to end, these characters or these themes, and how am I gonna, and if the story, the Sabian symbols are too action like and there are no protagonists, which is usually not the case, think of your planets as protagonists. So if you have, I don't know, Venus and Mars, that's a simple kind of lover story, or whatever, or Saturn and Moon, then it's a parent child, mother father. You get the gist again. Yeah, so use those planets as actual characters if you're struggling to find the characters within or relate yourself to the characters of the Sabian symbols. And then, like I say, just draw the storyline from the beginning to this end, and see what happens in the middle and how you get to this end of your northern planets there. So it's a beautiful exercise and it's such fun, and I highly recommend. Another thing to watch for and to look for rather is the rulers of your nodes. So your south node ruler would be another helper, even if it's a square. Well, it's kind of the focal point or the focus point of your not just shadow, but your south node activity. So it's like where you're most active, where you're most visible, where your south node and all its shadow and talents are most visible and usable, is where the ruler of your south node is. And then obviously what sign it is, and that would add another layer to this usefulness and how you work, how you actually how your south node is activated, how you practice it, if you like. and or rather how you exhibit it and manifest it. And then the North Node the same. So where the ruler of your North Node is kind of where those lessons are going to be coming the fastest and the furiousest. So the ruler of your North Node is where the activity and where the cauldron of this growth is most present for you. And then the last thing I want to say a little bit about is the transits. And this is really another fantastic way of really getting to know your South Node and both of them basically, but and what they want from you and how you are working them, how you are living them at the moment, right? And then it would help you see where all the holes are and what you can do to improve. So just take you through some examples. I didn't go through all of them, but if, for instance, what I'm essentially saying is watch for transits, not of the nodes necessarily themselves, unless they are touching on so that would be a reverse nodal return or a nodal return. And this video is not about that. I might include it in the square, or I'll see. But what I mean by transit is like look for planets that actually, like Mercury, Venus, Sun, Moon, when they actually touch and conjunct either of these points of yours. So because it's like that function of yours. So let's say Mercury will be, so if Mercury touched on your South Node, the questions you could be asking yourself and really getting clearer in your mind and what's going on with your South Node and how you're using it is like, pay attention to what you're thinking and what reality you are manifesting through your words and how your words are creating more of what you want and what energizes you and what drains you. So this whole South Node theme. And then if Mercury is touching your North Node, conjunct your North Node, then think about what visions and messages and inspirations are you getting that are energizing you, that are filling you, with expansive feeling inside you, right? Energetically speaking. If it's Venus conjunct through transit, via transit, right? If it's conjunct your South Node, then look to relationships, values, and pleasures that if it's South Node that are not serving you anymore, but you kind of feel triggered, like, gluttony, greed, lust, all those kind of extreme pleasure, values, and relationship dynamics that you experience, and they will be most likely evident and kind of in your face. You won't be able to ignore them when Venus is on your South Node. And also, this doesn't, if it's a Venus or Mercury, that's literally a day. Well, Venus maybe a couple of days, however, Moon a few hours or in a couple of hours to be exact. But what you want really is with the Moon, particularly when it enters the sign already, happily, I would be considering it as a conjunct. I would be watching all this with the Moon in particular because it's the fastest moving. But with any of them, when it enters the sign, start paying attention. So if you have a South Node in Leo, then when any of the planets like Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus enter Leo, start paying attention. What shadow of your South Node are being brought up in the area of the planets, or Venus relationships, values, pleasures. And as it gets closer to your sign, to your South Node, you will notice that intensity of these lessons is undeniable. And then also when the North Node, what kind of relationships actually feel beneficial to you, actually feed your soul and are meaningful, deeply meaningful to you. And that would be of the flavor of your North Node. And you might find this thing that I spoke earlier about, which is that those relationships you kind of don't really want. There's something about them that you just kind of fear a little bit because, you're so out of your depth, or out of your comfort zone there. But the evidence is that they actually really are fulfilling you. So if it's Mars, what are the actions? What's your actions? What it is that you're doing? And again, how are those actions actually affecting you? Are they doing something good for you, or are they just derailing your path or getting you off it? And also your motives. Motives very important with Mars. And if it's a Moon, again, think about what's making you feel safe and happy. And also what's unnerving you. But then you will see that and this is certainly for me, particularly this new Moon in Virgo, that literally was like 3 degrees away from my, or 4 degrees away from my, but it was in my stellium already, and got me into this real funk about productivity and work and service and all of that. And it just made me, so I otherwise feel safe in those areas of Virgo, and I feel happy because I love planning. I was a project manager before doing this darker materials or other stuff, and I just love I love to be, to plan. Like I say, I'm good with detail. I love to analyze, but I just was hit with this heavy sense of like, why do I bother to be so? Why do I care to follow these rules of Virgo productivity, whatever? Because they actually drain me very quickly. They drain me. So when a moon, otherwise, whatever makes you feel happy about your south node, when the moon approaches it, you might well feel like drained by those very activities. And the sun is another really, and for me, this happened being the new moon, it happened at the same time. So I was so much clearer about all of this than last time I was. Because sun kind of sheds the light on it, which, shines the light literally and like a torch, right? So you can see all the stuff that you otherwise don't really see or get to see or whatever. And you can see how much you're identified with all of that south node stuff once sun is there. And then when it's in this north node area, then you will notice how the activity is there. And when it's a full moon, so then you would have sun on your north node, and then south node will be moon. Then you have a beautiful kind of dance. You will know what lights you up. So it will be stacked up so perfectly against what drains you and what you thought actually makes you feel happy and safe. So the full moons are also particularly important to look when they fall on your nodal axis, particularly when the sun is on your north node. And the last tip, and then that's it, I want to give you for working with your nodes, and I've only discovered this the other day, and it's been the biggest revelation. I'll leave a link to just to explain this in more detail and give you a list of these things. It's just the first website I found. I mean, I really didn't, go to town with trying to find, just didn't. So you can research it yourself, but that will give you a good starting point. Basically, they're called solfeggio frequencies, and they have numbers like, I don't know, 396 hertz or 421, I think, hertz or whatever. I'm currently working with 396 because I'm 369 in numerology, and that's what kind of started all this for me. But what was beautiful about it, which is how the universe works, isn't it really? It's just wonderful, is that I clocked onto it just before the new moon, or just around it. And when I looked it up, it was about guilt. And Virgo is the ultimate, guilt tripping sign, and shame, and what else? Like there was another one. It was to do with work as well. Anyway, what that frequency stands for. So I've been listening to it as part of my new moon ritual, releasing, and in the run up to it, and just releasing this guilt and all the rest that comes with that, and with my Virgo South Node and Stellium there. And I could just feel so many, it's still subtle, I can't say I've been cleansed from it, but I highly recommend it basically. So go to that link as I'll leave below, and then see which of those frequencies resonate with your South or your North Node. So when sun is there in particular, or moon being particularly kind of personal planets. But equally, if it's in Pisces, it can be anything, because it's sound, so it's music and it's subliminal. Yeah, essentially any planet crossing either of your nodes, I would be checking those frequencies and which ones resonate with those archetypes, and then listen to them to either to help you release, or to help you call and attract more. And that's it for this tutorial. Hope this was helpful, and I will be in the next tutorial hopefully next week. We're still in the middle of renovations, and the lockdown is starting to happen again, so hopefully next week will be okay for me to record. I should be fine, but yeah, the plan is next week, but maybe gets derailed because of all the other stuff. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you next week. You are kidding me.